All right, folks, let's bring in QI Research CEO, Chief Strategist, Danielle DiMartino Booth. All right, let's just talk about what we know so far. Two big bombshells, the dissenters, also shifting from jobs back to being concerned about inflation.
Yeah, I don't think I understand that. I mean, if you're watching prices in real time, Trueflation TRU, which we've spoken about many times, came in this morning at 1.15%.
It's in free fall. It's in free fall.
It is, and it has been in free fall, and that's a headline number. That's even with the increase we've seen these last few days in oil prices, which is going to translate straight to the gas pump.
All right, I got to ask you about this letter that you wrote to the FOMC because I don't know how to interpret it. It seems like maybe you're asking Powell and company to go to war with Besson and Trump. Obviously, we can't read the whole thing for the audience, but I will, and we should have highlighted this. You end with, at the risk of being political, which I've decided, dedicated my career to avoiding, you have a Fed chair candidate in your circle who can force the hands of Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and President Trump. Do you want the current Fed to go to war with President Trump and Bessent?
I'm clearly too late because they've already had the vote, Charles. They had the vote today. They have the vote at every single January FOMC to vote in the chair of the Federal Open Market Committee. All 19 members had the chance to vote in Christopher Waller. They chose today not to, which helps explain why Waller dissented, because this is the only thing that will keep his hat in the ring against Rick Reeder.
But what good would it have done if they said,
well, we wouldn't be watching Powell behind the podium right now. We'd be waiting for Christopher Waller, the chair of the FOMC, to step up to the podium at 2:30 p.m. Eastern today, right now.
So let's then pick up on that. Rick Reeder now, his stock has surged.
I dare say that Christopher Waller's stock has surged
okay,
a
we're going
lot
to talk
in the
about
last
that too.
few seconds.
The media, in the meantime, falling in love with Reeder. This article out saying, inside the word of 2.3 trillion, got an insomniac. Apparently, only sleeps 4 hours a night. That makes me qualify for the Fed too, because that's what I sleep. But sometimes when I'm lucky, can you handicap this?
Well, I mean, look. This is how I handicap it, okay? Christopher Waller is a true Federal Reserve independent central banker. He's never made a political donation in his entire life to either party. That's what you're supposed to do. It was grounds for termination had I done so when I was at the Fed.
Really?
Rick Reeder has made donations to many individuals who would be considered enemies of the current administration. And by the way, that $2.3 trillion part, do you remember when Hank Paulson became Treasury Secretary? The tax bill that he avoided was $100 million at the time because he had to liquidate his Goldman position. Imagine what he would save in unpaid taxes.
So it sounds like you maybe, because a lot of people are worried about Walsh also being sort of a sheep and doves, sheep's clothing, or whatever the saying is, not necessarily saying the right things now, but being a totally different Fed chair if he were to get the job than when President Trump wants. He wouldn't be the dove that Trump is looking for.
No, he is very much anti-money printing. He's anti-zero interest rate policy. Warsh, and Warsh is very much on the record with this, so you're right. He may be saying what he needs to stay in the running, but that's certainly not what his personal philosophy is.
He's been high on some of these betting odds. Okay, so on average, Jay Powell says the word inflation at least 40 times. Okay, this is it right here, right? He says it less in the January meetings, but he says it a lot. And apparently, inflation is still on their mind. We just heard Edward Lawrence saying, okay, somehow this shifting now is going from being concerned about labor back to a sort of being overly concerned about inflation. We just talked about that. It doesn't seem like it matches. So I hope they hit him hard on this in the Q&A.
Look, this isn't just about Ozempic. We had an earnings report out yesterday. People are spending less on dog food. Okay, that means that the consumer is really stretched. He's not listening to what these company CEOs are saying about the devastation that they've suffered in their pricing power.
So in a nutshell, what's your assessment of where the economy is and what the Fed should be doing this year?
Look, private employment peaked in April. This is something that Powell acknowledged at the last press conference. They're clearly failing.
And he said brace for lower revisions.
Exactly, and that's exactly what we got. We got deep revisions, and yet now all of a sudden the pendulum has swung to being worried about inflation again?
Right.
I don't think so.
Right. All right. Stick around. I need your help when the Q&A session starts. We've got to hash through it. But I also want to bring in our next guest because he says when it comes